Hello and welcome everyone to the smartsocial.com Superintendent Spotlight, our district leader podcast. We have an absolute expert here today. We're going to interview a superintendent and talk about not only some of the biggest questions parents have for us, but also we're going to dive into a bullying story that I think you're going to really like about Netflix and something you can learn from it and actually go watch it in the future. We have an exciting lineup for you here today. But remember, our goal here at smartsocial.com is to help you keep your kids safe on social media and all these digital tools so they can be successful in school and someday shine online to get that dream job. That's right. We can't say no to all these devices. We can't say, no, you're never using these. Pretend like this is a car. It can be very dangerous if you're not trained on it. That's why Smart Socials, let's teach everybody how to use it responsibly before they get a phone so that by the time they get the keys to the car or the phone in their hands, they're ready to navigate the digital world. And we're excited about that. We're optimistic here. And there is no shame in some of the tips we give you. We want you to know that if you're a parent and you're struggling in this space, or if you are a district leader who's watching this, we're here for you as we reach millions of people around the country.
Hello, I'm Dr. Paul Gosman. I'm superintendent of schools for the Lincoln Public Schools in Lincoln, Nebraska, the state capital. We serve over 41,000 students in grades pre-kindergarten through 12th grade in about 70 different school facilities. Our district spans about 100 square miles, and we are unique in a way because we are a one-town, one public school district setup.
All right, Superintendent, it's so good to have you here today on our Superintendent Spotlight. We're going to have you address parent questions. The first answer you're going to have is a little bit longer, but some of the other ones, we're going to ask you some of the biggest parent questions and get your expert insights. Now, Superintendent, I want to dive in first into your story about anti-bullying. Our normal question is, what is your advice to parents about talking to kids about being kind to each other to reduce online bullying? But I think you have a really cool story. Walk us through it.
Oh, certainly. And thank you for the opportunity. I am in my third year as the superintendent of the Lincoln Public Schools here in Nebraska. However, previous to this assignment, I was the superintendent of the Sioux City schools in Sioux City, Iowa. And right after I moved there, I served about 15 years as the superintendent in that district. But right after I began my tenure there, one of the local billionaires actually stopped in to say, I would like to make a film with my family's foundation surrounding the challenges of bullying. And we'd like to show some of the good programs that are in place in the school district there in Sioux City. They had created a computer company and had sold that company and made a fair amount of money and then wanted to use that money for good and to reduce bullying. And the Waite family and the Kind World Foundation helped us do just that. But they were clear with us that they would also like to look in our schools in Sioux City. That's a district of about 15,000 students in about 25 buildings. They wanted to also see if they could discover a student who was being bullied and kind of experience that. And so I went to the school board because I was new there and wanted to make certain the school board was behind such a project because it was very likely that some of our dirty laundry would be set on the table for all to see at that time with this documentary. And the end result became a documentary titled Bully, which happens to be on Netflix now. It's been on there for a number of years. This documentary covers 5 different school districts. There are 5 vignettes about the challenges of bullying in our society. Some of those are digital bullying challenges, not all of them. But the one that focused on Sioux City the most was a child that was being bullied and the interactions that that child had with his family, with his parents and siblings, with his classmates and the school and administrators. And as I said earlier, we're not particularly proud of everything that was shown in that documentary because it was not always the most positive light. However, I'm very proud of that school district and that Board of Education for stepping forward and engaging the most important narrative of the day, that of school-based bullying, and doing all that we can to reduce that. I commonly said after this documentary was released at the Tribeca Film Festival and then purchased by Netflix, I had the opportunity to speak at a Senate field hearing. I spoke at the White House. I spoke at the Tribeca Film Festival surrounding the challenges we have with bullying. And we commonly said we're not unique because we have bullying in our schools, but we want to become unique by becoming a school district that makes a difference. Bullying is around everywhere in society. Schools are a reflection of the community they serve. We see bullying at sporting events and shopping malls and movie theaters, but certainly in schools as well. And I'm really proud of this community for creating an initiative and a combined group of citizens and school officials and private providers and really working together to reduce the negative impacts by reducing bullying in that community. And that was about a 10-year journey. It wasn't always a pleasant journey, but it's one that I'm proud of the district for taking on and for their success. Now, as it relates to the question about advice to kids, when parents are talking to kids about being kind to each other and online bullying, I often say that we should think before we post, before we text. There are times where the digital environment follows us everywhere. And when a child is being bullied in the digital environment, they carry the bullying with them. It goes with them into their home, into their bedroom. And it's almost as though there's not a safe place. And so I really do encourage families to think about devices and the way that they can be used, of course, for good, but more importantly, the way they're used negatively and how to prevent that negative impact from following that child or that student around.
I love that. Those are some great tips and congrats on all the success. And also, I'm really impressed with the vulnerability that your former school district had to open things up because we really want to do help kids. Doesn't it behoove us to say, hey, it exists everywhere? There's an old proverb that says, even if in a king's palace, there are lizards. Basically, little things can get in and it's impossible to keep the pests out. And I think that's fascinating that you opened it up for the betterment of children. Kudos to you and your district. I love that.
Thank you for that. And I do have to say on their behalf that they were the only district that allowed filmmakers in. And the other 4 vignettes that are a part of this, I'm certainly not critical of those districts either, but this district stood tall and let them in. And the end result, as people will see, is not always the most positive, but it helped that community grow.
Help the community grow. Also, it helped the country grow because, yeah, that's really powerful. I love that. So let's dive into one of the other big questions that parents are asking us a lot, Superintendent. It's about disappearing messages. And I've got a few questions for you about this. What are the main risks and dangers associated with disappearing messages that parents should be aware of?
Certainly. What strikes me immediately is that it's harder for parents to monitor their children's use when disappearing messages are a part of that functionality because they don't see it right away. However, a disappearing message doesn't ever really disappear in the sense that it could be captured by someone else and used for negative purposes anywhere at any time. And so I think the teens use disappearing messages because they feel there's a little more safety in that. And maybe there's a fraction of more safe, greater safety with that. But truthfully, you can't post anything without the knowledge that it, likely could live forever. And so parents do have more trouble monitoring that use because it's harder to access those disappearing messages. But that's something they need to talk with their students about regularly, their children about regularly, and understand what platforms are being used. And it's not normal for the parents to have as much technological knowledge as their students do, but as it relates to social media, they absolutely must.
Yeah, so well said. Another question that parents are asking us that I'd like you to comment on is how can parents start a conversation with their child about the risks of using disappearing messages?
Yeah, and I think that begins by talking with the children about the platforms they're using and knowing the general protocol of those platforms so that they understand which ones have those disappearing messages, and then really diving in and using some real-time examples, scenarios, if you will, about how students who have posted something they assume will disappear in 20 seconds or something like that has actually been captured and used against them in a blackmail kind of format or a bullying kind of format. And it's important that they have those kind of conversations because this is really serious information that can have profound psychological impact on children.
Yeah, absolutely. Downstream. And you and I, as adults, understand that. We know that every little thing that we touch online is attached to our online reputation. I love how you basically are telling students, let's talk with them about the platforms they're on and how that impacts them. Absolutely great. The next question we get often from parents about disappearing messages, and that I'd like you to comment on is, do you have any examples of a situation where disappearing messages created an issue that may have impacted a student's life?
Yes. And often what you hear is a scenario where a disappearing message didn't disappear. I mean, it's captured and that it's used for negative impact. And it unfortunately occurs far too often. And it's interesting to watch this. And when we deal with it with students, there are times where students have been impacted by a captured, disappearing message and they think their life is over. They cannot imagine life beyond what was captured here and how they will ever get through this. They're embarrassed or they don't want to talk to their parents about it. And they might make the most serious decision anyone could imagine as it relates to how a message is being used against them. It's really important for us to talk to our students about obviously prevention. Preventing that kind of a scenario is the very best way to handle it. But if they find themselves in a scenario like that, how to work their way through that and understand that life is far more grand than simply one message that's there. If it can be prevented, do so. But if they find themselves in the challenge, to find ways to work through that together.
What I'm hearing from you, Superintendent, and it is so good what you've said. What I'm hearing from you as well is, and parents, this is a really good message for you listening right now. It's kind of like you saying, parents, I'll be ready to teach my kid how to drive when I'm ready, when they're ready. No, it probably happens years before they're ready to drive. So that precautionary, if they're in a friend's car who has gotten their permit or something, we always relate it back to driving because parents always say, I love that because we understand the safety around driving. And in a parallel to what we're talking about as well, or on topic, we never know when bullying or disappearing messages or a predator tries to chat with your kids. And I'm here to tell you, as a guy who's traveled to 29 states for speeches to 250,000 students on campuses, you never know until it's too late. And so if you have that conversation tomorrow around the dinner table and open it up with some of our dialogue starters for free at smartsocial.com's foundation on our website, you will then be a little bit ahead. Even if your kids roll their eyes, they'll be a little bit more protected. Superintendent, great tips on this. Absolutely great. Okay, my next question is around a big question that parents have, Superintendent, around screen time. Now, I've talked with 100 and probably 250 superintendents over the last couple of years here at Smart Social as we try and build the world's best parent engagement program. And the biggest thing the superintendents tell me is, Josh, if we could make screen time addiction go away, all these other problems would not happen. We wouldn't have predators chatting with kids because kids wouldn't want their phones. They'd be like, yeah, whatever. We wouldn't have fear of missing out. We wouldn't have all these other things. And so this might be one of the biggest questions. And here's what I'd love to hear from you. What are your tips that parents can do to better manage screen time at home?
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity to answer that because I tend to agree that this might be the most important conversation that parents and students and children can have. I start with just a quip, if you will, that success comes when we prepare to succeed. And we have to be thoughtful about the actions and steps that we're going to take as we're striving towards success. All screen time is not the same. There's active screen time where students are maybe creating and sharing, hopefully positive messages. There's passive screen time where they're ingesting, if you will, or consuming that which is shared. It is really important that people remember that success comes when you prepare to succeed. So you must develop a plan for how that screen time will take place. What amount of it will be active? What amount of it will be passive? And when it's passive, where will that be done? How will that be done? What kind of monitoring might occur based on the age of the student or child that's there? And I would say that as children grow, that plan needs to be revisited often because just a couple years of difference can make a big difference, not only in the life and maturity of a child, but also in the availability of technology that changes so rapidly today. It can be simple to let this pass, but this is not something you want to overlook.
Yeah, so true. And for the parents watching this, Anti-Bullying Month is October 2024. Disappearing Messages Month at Smart Social is November of 2024. Anti-Bullying Month. I got an email from a mom today and 200 testimonials saying this is invaluable. Disappearing Messages Month might be life-saving. And then we get around the holidays when every kid, superintendent, seems to get a new phone, a new device, a new watch, and that's when screen time is coming in. So parents, I want you to make sure you keep in mind at smartsocial.com, come to one of our live events, watch the resource in English, Espanol, Mandarin, any one of the replays. We're going to have some incredible ways for you to reduce screen time using third-party apps that will help the kid to manage in an adult way. I'm going to give you a preview and a teaser. I pay $40 a year for this for myself. Yes, I'm one of the top 5 in the world when it comes to kid safety. I still have an app that keeps me from being online too much. It's called ClearSpace. I pay for it. They don't pay us. It's really neat. Helps your kids manage when they should get off that app. Superintendent, I wrote down a couple things. I really like what you said because I learned from you on this. This is really fun. Active screen time, passive screen time. I wrote down four more things. Family screen time,
Mm.
because we would argue that if you're watching a funny, I love around the holidays to watch Christmas Vacation, the National Lampoon's movie with the family, and we just always laugh at that. That might be family screen time, which is it active? And then there's also learning screen time. I would argue perhaps, right? Active screen time is possibly learning, but then some of them are just like, I'm watching a YouTube video on how to learn to play the guitar, and stuff like that. So I love that. And we're going to put this into our December content, but then also something you said so important, location and time of day in a way, right? Where is that screen time happening at and what time of day? Is it too close to bedtime? Is that an appropriate time where the whole family can see it in the house and so on? Love those tips. Superintendent, the next big question we get from parents I'd love your insights on is what makes these apps so addictive? Let's hear from two students as they explain why they can't stop scrolling.
I think the most addictive part about social media is the constant new content that you see. You're always being introduced to new content, especially on apps like TikTok. I think the short videos, when they end so quick, you start to lose your ability to have a longer attention span. I've caught myself finding long TikTok videos and I can't stand watching the whole thing.
This generation really adapted to the fact that we don't have a large attention span. We really only concentrate for 30 seconds. So getting information that quickly, I think, enables us to just want to keep watching more. You don't even need to care about what they're presenting to you, but just the fact that you can sit there and watch it and you're oddly enjoying it. Social media is pretty addictive. People have said it's like a drug. So it is addictive because you can't stop watching it. Your mind just plays on loop and it enjoys the fulfillment of everything firing in your brain to just keep watching.
Parents, if you're watching right now, this is a preview. Our live evening events that we have every single week for districts all over the country, they have these little micro 1-minute videos. That was actually 45 seconds or so. They're student friendly, they're parent friendly, and they dive in. That's like a micro little documentary. Parents, if your students need volunteer hours, we have something here at Smart Social where the kids get volunteer hours, they get a gift card, and they share with us their insights on how they approach these different topics. Superintendent, I want your feedback on this. What are your thoughts? Are you seeing this in your district? How are teens relating with this? What are they saying?
I'll give you a couple of thoughts and then maybe a story. First of all, what's making these apps so addictive is money. These companies that are putting social media apps together are spending money to figure out what can entice more views and more watchers. And that's their business model, and they're successful. It's not always evil, but it often can be used for harm. If you think through the history of different social media apps that have been out there, MySpace to Facebook to Twitter to whatever they call that now, to the apps that we just heard about, TikTok and so on. And those are going to change even more rapidly as time goes on, I suspect. And those students hit the nail on the head in talking about why they focus on them and how they know that they're being drawn into them. We are a district that does not allow cell phones in the instructional protocol. We actually have sleeves, like many districts are doing now, where the students are to put their devices so that they're not distracted by them while they use another device that we give them, a computer. And I remember when we first implemented this, watching a student walk in the room. And as you know, most people keep their devices, students particularly, in their back. This student was searching both back pockets, trying to figure out what to do to put their device in the sleeve. What I figured out was this student had a burner phone, if you will. This student had a phone they knew had to go into the sleeve so that they would acquire what they needed to for the class, but they actually had their real cell phone with them at the same time because that student was so addicted to that device. They just couldn't imagine being without it, even across the room. We really have a responsibility to see to it that they have effective digital citizenship.
Yeah, so true. The burner phone. And as you can see in this video, these teens are aware of this and they're saying our attention span is shorter and shorter. So fascinating. I want to share with you, Superintendent, another question we get. Parents are saying, is social media positive or negative for my child? Well, let's hear from a student on why they think video apps can be so addictive.
And what makes social media so addictive is how the algorithms are based on using content to judge whether or not someone's worthy.
and using people's short attention spans to evaluate them as pieces of code, which also means that social media doesn't really care about your opinion, but really what keeps you on that platform longer, whether that's from likes, comments of engagement, sharing it to other people, or even just watching it through. The algorithm judges you as a piece of data and whether or not someone should be praised for being controversial or thrown away for not being exciting enough, even if they're pouring their heart and soul into the content. It is a heartless beast. When I spend too much time on social media, that can look like being happy because something really cool happened in my friend's life. They went hiking. A friend of mine saw snow for the first time a couple of days ago, and it can make me feel very happy and energized. But other times, it can just be really draining. It can be really negative. It depends who I'm following. It depends what's being posted.
What she said was social media doesn't care about your opinion, just what keeps you on the platform longer. It's a heartless beast, which really goes back to what you just said. I love that. Money is making these apps so addictive, and that's good insight. It's not that they're evil and they could be based in another country. It's not that they're typically evil. They just want us on there so they can sell more ads, do more things. In most cases, I think that's very reasonable, and I would agree with that. What is your insight based on what you just saw from Katie, the high school student?
Yeah, just going back to the original question, is it positive or negative? The answer is yes, it's both. And it's up to us as adults modeling for children or parents modeling for their own children, or in my case, as a superintendent modeling for students in the team I work with, that we acknowledge the positives that are there, but recognize the negatives that are so often so prevalent. I do note that in a lot of the work that I do, it does appear to me at times that the negative posts on whatever platform seem to garner more attention and become more forwarded or shared at times than some of the positive posts do. And I guess I just offer that as food for thought. We've really got a responsibility to make certain that if it's being used for positive gain, not to harm.
Yeah, so well said. Okay, let's dive into the next question that we get a lot from parents. This is my favorite as superintendent. I have a few books out called Light, Bright, and Polite that teach kids how to navigate social media in a positive way. And we really call what we do teaching students how to shine online. So here's something I'd like to get your insight on. What advice do you have for parents and students to help students use social media in a positive way so they can get the best job someday, the best career, the best college opportunities, and more?
Yeah, and thank you, Josh, for the books that you have written. I'm aware of those and have seen them myself. The posting that occurs online, no matter how hard you try, becomes a resume that never leaves you. You are carrying it with you at all times. Even if you think you deleted it at some point, it very likely could show up again. And it's part of what we do here in the Lincoln Public Schools. We teach digital citizenship. We try to work with the students to best understand why you need to think very carefully about the repercussions that could occur on any post you make, positive or negative. Even though we think we might be posting or maybe texting something that's private, maybe that's disappearing. We talked about disappearing messages before. I would posit that there are no such thing. There is no such thing as a disappearing message. Anything can be captured, shared, and made public, and they are searchable. And because of the way the internet works, they are permanent. And just understand the gravity of that in every little post that's made, regardless of what platform, what time of day, and different instances that a student's life might take. That could be viewed one way as it dealt with the way in which they intended to post it, yet it could be viewed very differently when taken out of context later.
So well said. The next question that we get from a lot of parents has to do with avoiding strangers in dangerous situations online. I'd love your insights into this. What is your advice to parents and students to avoid talking to strangers and avoiding dangerous situations online?
Oh, certainly. It's really important. It's a responsibility of leaders of children and certainly parents of their own children to know who they're talking to online. And they need to know who they're talking to online. And students or children should know that they should only talk with people that they know and they know from another context. Someone they've met in person is an example. Someone the family knows and trusts would be another example. And that, this has become an issue where, particularly as the students get a little bit older into high school, whether it becomes a privacy matter that the student is able to have some conversations that the parents don't know about, it's very important that the parents do know with whom the students or their children are engaging and the nature of those engagements.
Yeah. Excellent. Very well said. I couldn't agree more. Let's dive into the hottest topic as we get closer to summer or holidays. Everybody talks about video games. What is your advice to parents and teens about video game safety and also, just as importantly, managing video game screen time?
Yes, and this is something that I was able to experience as a parent myself because my youngest is now 27 or 28 years old. So it's been some time, but it is important to note that simply purchasing a video game system, regardless of which one it is, doesn't mean you know exactly what content the child will engage with because that content is often purchased in other ways, whether it's downloaded or purchased as a separate game. And it's important, once again, that you become successful by preparing to succeed, developing a plan for what that video game time looks like, what's included in that, what games are a part of that. Revisit that plan often because as quickly as children grow up and they change and their psyche changes, technology also changes, maybe even at a more rapid pace. And so it's important that they know what games are being played and to look at those ratings and to study what games and what programs the student is working with so that they're doing the necessary communication with their child to make sure that they're safe.
Yeah, very well said. I love that. Superintendent, a lot of parents are having questions during breaks, whether it's summer or over the holidays, or even any other type of break the kids might have. It could be even over the weekend. They have questions about screen time and too much screen time reducing the motivation their kids have, whether it's for chores or homework. So, my question for you is what is your advice to parents about the impact screen time can have on reducing the motivation that teens might have to want to do the important things like chores, homework, being nice to their siblings, being nice to their parents, and also taking care of themselves?
We've heard from children or students themselves today that screen time is addictive. We've heard from them today that it's both positive and it's negative. Hopefully, the message I have shared carries forward that we really have to develop a plan for success as it deals with screen time. It's not something that you should just let occur and see what happens. I think even most adults that would be watching this can think of a time where they themselves have had a bit too much screen time and felt the negative repercussions of that. Maybe not to the extent that some student or child has that would ingest far more digital media than maybe we would feel was wise, but still they would sense what that could be like. And that gives you, those students' remarks, that sense that you have of yourself gives you the parameters, the reason for the parameters of needing to develop good, positive planning around active screen time and that passive consumer-based screen time, as well as the others that you've mentioned here, Josh, with family screen time and more.
Yeah, so true. Superintendent, I want to thank you for your time here today. We've gone through so much on this Superintendent Spotlight. Everyone watching, this is absolutely incredible and such an honor to be coming to you. But I also want to remind you, smartsocial.com has 450 incredible resources. We have weekly live parent events, 54 or more, with all of our partner school districts. Gone are the days of you miss out on a social media safety night event. Oh no, I guess I'll let my daughter be on TikTok because I missed the speaker because I was busy that night. No, we have another one the next week. We have a replay of last night's in English, Espanol, Mandarin, and 12 other languages. We have real teens in our video lessons, as you just saw. If your teens need volunteer hours, please turn them on to smartsocial.com. There's a way for them to get involved. They get a $25 gift card for being a part of the program, and it's absolutely incredible. We also have the best premium parent newsletter giving parents what they need to know about dialogue starters, safety tips, and so on. Shout out to the dozens of parents at smartsocial.com that do the research for millions of people around the country to change the dialogue that we have about keeping kids safe on social media so they can be successful and shine online someday. Hey, Superintendent, thank you so much for joining us here today. I appreciate your time.
I'm honored to have joined you and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. For the rest of you, as the title of my book says, remember whenever you're posting online or even talking in person to keep it light, bright, and polite because our kids are watching. We'll see all of you on the next episode. Have a great rest of the day. Take care.